You're taking care of business with Marty and Clay on Bakersfield's right choice for Saturday Talk. Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even think it glows.
Now, what Christmas would be complete without a little Ray Charles?
And next week, we're going to have a lot of Ray Charles, aren't
Yes,
we,
we
Marty?
are. We are back on Taking Care of Business on Kern Radio, News Talk 1180. If you'd like to call in, our number is 842-KERN or 842-5376. And our guest, again, drum roll please, Clay, is the Honorable Jean Fuller, now the state senator from the 18th District.
Hey, Marty and Clay, this is fun to see you guys again.
It's always fun to have you with us.
Of course, I got a little wet getting here. Does that count?
Well, did Russell fly you in? Or
No, Russell is out shoveling out the sprinklers. You know how it always works in the rain.
Well, last time you were here, Russell was talking to Clay about airplanes after the show, and I didn't think we'd ever get the two of them apart.
Well, I know. I'm thinking about not allowing them to spend much time together. They think up a lot of trouble.
You know, what's interesting, and while we're talking about your husband, I find out he has a ranch in Lancaster, and I have a ranch up in Oakdale.
Oh, really?
So we have another issue to talk about.
Oh.
Well, no, wait a minute. I've been to your ranch in Oakdale. I don't know if I would call a fish farm a ranch.
Oh, even better. How fun.
Yeah, we have koi and black bass and catfish.
Well, I think we should have a visit. That sounds like a fun place.
Great idea.
It actually is a fun place, I have to admit. Speaking of fish, boy, how about that for a segue, huh? Mm-hmm. The number one question people asked me to ask you was about our friendly little smelt.
Yes.
And I guess the smelt didn't do so well in the courts recently.
Thank goodness, finally people are waking up. Judge Wenger had a decision just recently on December 14th that was very favorable for water users. And basically it said that the original decision that was based on shutting the pumps down in order to supposedly save the smelt was faulty, and that it was arbitrary, and that it was capricious. Wow, isn't that great?
Yes.
You know, Gene, I think people were always awake. It was the legislators that were asleep.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's basically that the federal government has a program that basically wants to preserve native fish, and that application sometimes is totally impractically pushed down. And so we have to, in California, have an alignment between the two. So this action gives us a chance to actually look at all the real causes for why we might want to look at, the fish and get the pumps going in the meantime. In other words, pumps maybe were being used as an excuse.
Right. So does this clear the way for us to turn the pumps back on, or not necessarily?
Yes, it absolutely clears the way. And I've had a bill for the last 2 years that has had a lot of opposition, and basically says we need to study all the stressors. We can't just keep basing science on, big pie in the sky theories like sort of our global warming and some of those other theories. And that, for example, the sewage that Sacramento dumps into the Sacramento River suffocates the fish and takes all the nutrients out. Not to mention it's way more expensive for everybody to have to clean back out as we try to drink it downstream.
Right.
So I went and testified that we needed to make sure that they had proper treatment or don't dump it in the river. But the main thing is, don't blame the pumps for what the sewage is doing.
And Sacramento does dump a lot of waste.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not going to get better because they're going to grow.
Sure.
And so, everybody else has to deal with this same thing. So why does Sacramento get a waiver, and why do we lose water and have the cost driven up significantly because of their actions?
Because, when you look at the unemployment caused by the smelt, this whole thing,
Absolutely.
it's incredible.
Absolutely.
When we were driving up 99 and then on 5 going up to Sacramento the other day for your and Shannon's swearing in, I can't believe looking out there and seeing all the land that used to be full of crops that now is just desert land.
Let's talk about unemployment for a second. I read this morning that Kern County is at 10, or Bakersfield's at 10.9%. Wasco and Shaft are over 26%. What can we do? What can you do as a legislator?
Well, one of the things we need to do as a legislature is we need to strengthen our competitive advantage. And, for a long time, California had a great competitive advantage over other states and other countries, but now we absolutely do not. And so, we need to pass the kinds of things that help our businesses now. Some of those things are some certain kinds of tax relief. And the other thing is to, attract more businesses here by decreasing the regulation. We have such high, harsh regulation with high penalties that it is way better for businesses to go just about anywhere else. And so we need to roll that back. So those are one and two issues. There are several other issues, but that's the first place to start that would be easy and cheap to start by rolling back these regulations.
Boy, I wish you would.
Yeah.
We're getting taxed to death in California.
Oh, yeah. I noticed someplace, I was reading someplace, they were saying that your three major issues are the fight for the water rights,
yes,
size of government, and to remove the needless environmental regulations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the things that I'm now that I'm transitioning over to the Senate, we're getting new committees and things, and so I'm working very hard to be able to be on the committees that would help that. Those will be announced in January. And one of the things I switched to and asked for is called the Rules Committee. And the reason I got on Rules was because after the last elections and how things came out, there are 2 Republicans on this committee of 5 called Rules, and we interview and confirm the governor's appointees. And obviously, this new governor will be putting a lot of appointees in, and a lot of them will be for regional water quality and wastewater quality and all the things that I'm interested in. So this way, I'll have my first shot at those cabinet members and agency directors.
Oh, good. So you'll have a chance at the water district.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, all of the state-appointed agency heads have to be confirmed by the Senate, and it has to go through this Rules Committee.
Good.
Does that include our supervisor appointments?
The supervisor appointments, no. There are some that are temporary that the governor makes, but anything that's like a permanent overall, like, for example, the head of medical services, the head of EPA, state Cal EPA, those kinds of issues, which are where the major work I do. If someone calls and they have a question about local, we try to help them, but basically at the end of the day, it has to go to the Board of Supervisors. If they call and they need relief from a state agency, that's where I can really help, and those are the people that head up those agencies.
Let me talk about the supervisor race in Kern County. Karen Go.
Yes.
I guess she's a Republican.
Yes.
And has never been in politics before, was appointed, and we had 2 good candidates that have been around for a long time, both in Wendy Wayne and Pete Parra. And yet the governor appointed Karen Go.
Well, I think what he saw in Karen is that he saw a fresh face, someone who has a history of community activism and a nonprofit experience, business experience. I mean, she has a huge publishing background, as you probably know. And, we're kind of proud of her in Kern County because she went from here clear back to New York and, climbed her way up to head a publishing agency, and then came back to help us and help the church and help her Gardens Pathways. I have a very high regard for Karen, and maybe we need a fresh face sometimes.
She has done a tremendous job with Garden Pathways.
She absolutely has.
I mean, I went to their function of 2 weeks ago, and it was just awesome watching the kids, how they've developed. But the comment that I read in today's paper also is, Karen Go, is she going to be like Zach Scribner, easy to talk to, like Senator Gene Fuller?
Well, I think Karen, from what I know of her, she is very easy to talk to, and I think that, she's a very independent-minded individual, and I think that she will study the issues. She's very bright, and then she'll take on whoever it is with what she believes is right. So I'm looking forward to see what she comes up with.
I guess my real question in that comment was, why do the unions think that you're so easy to talk to?
Well, I have been talking to everybody for a number of years in this community, and 36 to be exact in education. And I do pride myself in being someone who listens to all sides. I pride myself in being someone who makes a judgment. But at the end of the day, I don't always vote that way. I just make sure I'm well informed on the issues.
Very good. We are talking to Gene Fuller on Taking Care of Business, Kern Radio Newstalk 1180. You and I were talking in Sacramento about good governor, bad governor.
Yes.
I made a mental note about that. You wanted to talk about good governor, bad governor.
Well, I think we were referring to, they're having the battle of the governors. Governor Schwarzenegger was trying to get his last minute, all of you need to pass this, which we did and we do and we should have. $8 billion more that we pass now, and it would be $16 billion more cuts next year, and there's no reason not to. Some of them are just fixes that would keep us from being sued. And pretty much saying, I tried very hard and it's not all my fault. And then we had on Wednesday, we had the other governor come in and say, this has been a long-term building. It's not my fault, and I've got to get this done in the next 60 days. And here's what I want you to do. And so, one was sitting, one was not, but yet nothing happened with the legislature. The legislature did not act on that $8 billion, and so it was very frustrating for me.
It was fascinating when we were up there in Sacramento. That next morning there was a breakfast put on by the Republican Party or the committee. But anyways, Jerry Brown was one of the speakers and Gavin Newsom was the other.
Yes.
Were you at that?
No, actually I was at the breakfast, but I saw him came in and I had other things to be doing.
Okay. Well, they both made an interesting comment that didn't really go over well with the crowd. And then the next speaker was Kevin McCarthy.
But what did Gavin say, though? He said he's a conservative in San
Francisco. And Kevin made a great comment back at Jerry and Gavin Newsom. It was incredible. So and it brought the house down. I mean, Kevin was fantastic.
Kevin was fantastic. He went to the place I went to next, and he's really a fabulous leader, and he's really influential in Sacramento now. And that's what we need. We need to roll down what we got in Washington to California.
Definitely. We're going to be back in a minute with Gene Fuller on Taking Care of Business, Kern Radio Newstalk 1180.